My beloved child, something was said inside your soulmate's family that changed the atmosphere in the room instantly. It was not a casual conversation. It was not another argument that would be forgotten by morning. Your soulmate finally spoke words they had been carrying silently for far too long. I'm ending my ties with. And then came the name no one expected them to say. Before I reveal what those words truly meant, understand this. What happened was not simply about choosing one person over another. It was about a boundary your soulmate had been afraid to draw, a boundary connected to the pressure, interference, and hidden influence surrounding your connection. For a long time, you may have wondered why someone who seemed to care so deeply could suddenly become distant. One moment, there was warmth. The next, silence. One day, they seemed ready to move closer to you. Then something changed, almost as if another voice had entered the space between you. You noticed it, didn't you? You could feel that some of their decisions did not match what was truly in their heart. There were conversations you never heard. Opinions offered when you were not present. Questions disguised as concern. Someone close to your soulmate kept planting doubt, not necessarily with loud accusations, but with carefully chosen words. Are you sure about this person? Maybe you should think again. What if you're making a mistake? At first, your soulmate listened because the voice came from someone they trusted. But something happened recently. They began to realize that advice can sound like love while still being rooted in fear. Picture a house late in the evening. The lights are low. A family conversation begins calmly, but beneath every sentence is tension that has been building for months. Your soulmate is sitting there, unusually quiet. Someone mentions you. Then another comment follows. And suddenly, instead of remaining silent as they had before, your soulmate looks up. Their voice is steady. No. You don't understand what this person means to me. The room changes. Someone tries to interrupt. But this time, your soulmate does not retreat. They finally say what they had been too afraid to say before. I cannot keep allowing someone else's opinion to decide who I love, who I trust, or what future I choose. My beloved child, this is where the deeper truth begins. The ties they spoke of ending were not necessarily ties of hatred. They were ties of unhealthy control. There is a difference. Love does not require someone to abandon family. But maturity sometimes requires a person to stop allowing family expectations, old loyalties, or fear of disappointing others to control their most personal decisions. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that difference. And this may explain something that confused you for a long time. Their hesitation was not always a lack of feeling. Sometimes it was a lack of courage. They cared about you, but they were caught between what their heart recognized and what people around them expected. That inner conflict exhausted them. Yet there comes a moment when standing in the middle becomes more painful than finally choosing a direction. That moment has arrived. Scripture gives a powerful principle in Genesis 2 verse 24. A person leaves father and mother and becomes joined to their spouse. This does not teach disrespect toward family. It reveals something deeper. That mature love requires the courage to form new loyalties and healthy boundaries. Your soulmate is beginning to understand this. But there is something else you need to hear. Do not turn this message into a reason to hate the people around them. That is not why I have come near to you. You do not know every conversation. You do not know every fear behind every opinion. Some people interfere because they are controlling. Others interfere because they are frightened. Some believe they are protecting someone they love, even when their actions create pain. Your task is not to fight their family. Your task is to remain rooted in truth. Because the strongest thing your soulmate said was not, "I choose one person and reject everyone else." It was something far more mature. "I will no longer let fear make my decisions for me." Those words changed everything. Imagine standing at the edge of an old bridge just before sunrise. Behind you lies a road filled with familiar voices, expectations, and old patterns. Ahead is a road you cannot completely see. Crossing that bridge requires courage. Your soulmate is standing there now. And for the first time, they are realizing that remaining loyal to everyone else's expectations may mean betraying what they know in their own heart. But listen carefully, because the sentence, "I'm ending my ties with," carries another layer. There was one particular connection, one influence, that had become stronger than you realized. Your soulmate had defended this person before. Trusted their judgment. Maybe even allowed their words to affect how they treated you. Then something was revealed. A contradiction. A conversation. A truth that did not match what they had been told. And suddenly, pieces began falling into place. Your soulmate started asking a painful question. How much of what I believed about this relationship was actually my own belief? And how much was placed in my mind by someone else? That question shook them. Because once they saw the pattern, they could not unsee it. This is why their declaration to the family was so serious. They were not merely ending a disagreement. They were breaking an old pattern of emotional dependence. And what happened immediately after those words were spoken surprised even them. Because one family member who had remained silent through everything finally stood up and revealed what they had known all along. What they said next changed the meaning of the entire conversation. The person who had been silent finally looked across the room and said something your soulmate was completely unprepared to hear. They were right to question what has been happening. Because there is something none of you know. Silence. Not the ordinary silence that follows an argument. This was the kind of silence where everyone suddenly realizes the conversation is about to become much bigger than they expected. Your soulmate stopped moving. The person continued. For months, someone in this family has been influencing this situation without telling the whole truth. Those words changed everything. Because until that moment, your soulmate believed the tension surrounding you came from simple disagreement. Different personalities. Different expectations. Perhaps a family member who was simply being protective. But now another possibility entered the room. What if some of the resistance had been built on information that was incomplete? What if someone had been shaping the story before your soulmate ever had the chance to judge it fairly? And what if that was the real reason your soulmate finally said, "I'm ending my ties with"? Listen closely, because what happened next explains why those words were so serious. A question was asked. Why did you never tell them what actually happened? No immediate answer came. Someone looked away. And your soulmate noticed it. That tiny reaction mattered. Because sometimes truth does not first reveal itself through words. Sometimes it appears in the hesitation before someone speaks. Your soulmate began remembering things. A conversation that had been repeated differently. A message whose meaning had somehow changed after being discussed with the family. A moment when your intentions had been questioned even though no one had asked you directly what you meant. Suddenly, memories that once seemed unrelated began connecting. And your soulmate asked one devastating question. Did you make me believe something about them that wasn't true? The room went still again. My beloved child, understand what this moment represents. This was no longer simply about you. Your soulmate was confronting something within themselves, the painful realization that they may have allowed another person's fears, assumptions, or personal agenda to influence how they treated someone they genuinely cared about. That realization can be difficult to carry. Because once a person recognizes that their decisions may not have been entirely their own, they must choose between defending the past or changing the future. Your soulmate chose to keep asking questions. And then something unexpected happened. The family member being confronted did not deny everything. Instead, they said, "I thought I was protecting you." Those 6 words revealed more than an argument ever could. Protecting them from what? From you? From heartbreak? Or from a future that someone else could not control? Your soulmate leaned forward. Protecting me from something that actually happened, or something you were afraid might happen? There was no quick response. And in that silence, your soulmate understood. Fear had been speaking louder than truth. Someone had looked at your connection through the lens of their own past experiences, their own disappointments, perhaps even wounds they had never healed. Then they handed those fears to your soulmate as if they were facts. This is why discernment matters. Proverbs 18 verse 17 teaches that the first person to present a case can seem right until another perspective is examined. Your soulmate had heard one side. Now they were finally examining the other. And that changed the entire emotional weight of the room. But do not misunderstand what I am showing you. This does not mean every concern raised by family was false. It does not mean your soulmate suddenly believes you are perfect. Real love does not require perfection. What changed was something more important. They realized they needed to know you through their own experience, not through someone else's interpretation of you. That was the boundary being drawn. Your soulmate finally said, "If I make a mistake, let it be because I made my own decision. But I will not lose someone important to me because I was too afraid to think for myself." Someone in that room began to cry. Not because they had been defeated. Because they finally understood how deeply this situation had affected your soulmate. For months, perhaps longer, your soulmate had been carrying two loyalties inside one heart. The desire to honor people they loved, and the desire to protect a connection they could not simply forget. Every time they moved toward you, guilt pulled them backward. Every time they tried to walk away, something inside them remained unfinished. That is exhausting. Imagine standing on a shoreline at night while two powerful currents pull in opposite directions. Eventually, you cannot remain in the same place. You must decide which direction leads toward truth. Your soulmate finally made that decision. But then the conversation took a turn no one expected. The quiet family member, the one who had revealed that something was being hidden, said, "There's more." Your soulmate looked at them. "What do you mean?" They hesitated before answering. "There was a conversation about the two of you that you were never supposed to find out about." Your soulmate's expression changed immediately. Because this was not something from years ago. It was recent. And according to what was revealed, someone had already made a decision involving your connection without your soulmate's knowledge. That was when your soulmate stood up. Their voice was no longer uncertain. "Tell me everything." And what came next explained exactly why they were ready to cut one specific tie, and why the person they named had been afraid this truth would ever reach them. "My beloved child," when your soulmate said, "Tell me everything," something changed in that room. The person who had been holding the truth lowered their eyes for a moment, almost as if they were deciding whether revealing it would heal the family or divide it even further. Then they finally spoke. "There was a conversation about you two several weeks ago. Someone had already decided that this relationship needed to end, and they were trying to make that happen without ever telling you." Your soulmate froze. Until that second, they had believed every distance between you, every unexplained silence, and every sudden change of heart had somehow happened naturally. Now they were beginning to wonder whether some of those moments had been quietly influenced from behind the scenes. The revelation became even more painful when your soulmate asked the obvious question, "Who?" No one answered immediately. One person stared toward the floor. Another shifted uncomfortably in their chair. And that hesitation told your soulmate almost everything before a name was even spoken. It was someone close. Someone whose advice had been trusted. Someone who had repeatedly presented themselves as concerned, reasonable, and protective. Your soulmate suddenly remembered how this person always seemed to appear whenever your connection was becoming stronger. Whenever hope returned between you, another warning followed. Whenever your soulmate considered reaching out, another doubt was placed before them. Then the name was finally spoken. Your soulmate did not shout. Their reaction was quieter than anyone expected, and somehow that made it more powerful. They simply whispered, "I trusted them." Those words carried the weight of everything that had happened. This was the same person your soulmate had defended when others questioned their influence. The same person whose opinion had been given more authority than it deserved. But now your soulmate was learning that this person had discussed your relationship privately, encouraged distance, and made assumptions about you without truly knowing your heart. Yet there was another detail that changed everything. The person revealing the truth said, "You still don't understand." They weren't only trying to separate you because they disliked the relationship. They were afraid of what would happen if the two of you became serious. That sentence landed differently. Your soulmate immediately asked, "Afraid of what?" And suddenly, nobody wanted to answer. My beloved child, this is where the deeper wound was uncovered. The resistance was not entirely about you. It was about change. Your presence represented a future in which your soulmate might finally begin making independent choices, establishing boundaries, and building a life that could no longer be controlled by old expectations. Sometimes people become uncomfortable when someone they love begins changing, even when that change is healthy. They fear losing influence. They fear traditions changing. They fear no longer being the first person consulted about every decision. That does not automatically make them evil. Fear can make otherwise loving people behave in ways they later regret. But your soulmate finally recognized something important. Understanding someone's fear does not mean surrendering your life to it. That realization was why their next words stunned everyone. Your soulmate looked directly at the person whose influence had shaped so many decisions and said, "I love my family, but I cannot keep sacrificing my own truth just to keep everyone comfortable. If staying connected to you means allowing you to control who I speak to, who I love, or what future I choose, then I am ending that kind of tie today." Notice the meaning carefully. They were not declaring hatred. They were ending the unhealthy hold that had been disguised as loyalty. There is biblical wisdom in this kind of courage. Galatians 1 verse 10 asks whether we are seeking the approval of people or seeking to please God. It is not a command to reject everyone who disagrees with us. It is a reminder that fear of human approval cannot become the ruler of our choices. Your soulmate had spent too long trying to keep everyone satisfied, and in doing so, they had created pain inside themselves and possibly inside you as well. Now they were finally confronting the cost of that pattern. But then something happened that nobody expected. The person being confronted began to cry. And instead of defending themselves, they admitted something your soulmate had never heard before. "I knew how much you cared about them," they said. "That was exactly why I became afraid." Your soulmate stared at them in disbelief. The confession continued, revealing that they had noticed something about your soulmate whenever your name was mentioned, something your soulmate had tried desperately to hide from everyone. Their entire expression changed when they spoke about you. Even during the period of distance. Even when they pretended they had moved on. Even when they told everyone they were fine. Someone in that family had noticed that your name could still silence an entire room inside your soulmate's heart. And then came the confession that made your soulmate's eyes fill with tears. "I knew you loved them more deeply than you were admitting. I was afraid that if they came fully into your life, everything in this family would change." That was when your soulmate finally understood the real reason behind so much interference. It was never simply that you were unwanted. Your connection had become powerful enough to represent change, and change frightened someone who had grown accustomed to having influence over your soulmate's life. But the most shocking revelation had still not been spoken. Because the quiet family member interrupted again and said, "There's one more thing you need to know. The person you're confronting wasn't acting completely alone." Your soulmate turned slowly. "What do you mean?" The answer came in a voice barely above a whisper. "Someone else has been asking questions about the person you love."